Hello, it's Georgetta Gancars here, and I just did a video previously on washes with different types of paintbrushes. One where you do wet on wet, where the canvas, you're wetting your paintbrush into your paints and you're putting it into the canvas and you're blending one color into another, and the other one where the canvas is dry and you're just putting the paint on top of a dry surface. And I want to show you a little bit with the palette knife. I've done a couple of videos on Impressionist painting, but I wanted to show you the difference of the texture and the thickness of putting the clouds on with the palette knife versus the brush. So please watch the other videos so you can see the one with working wet on wet with the brush. It's a different type of texture. The palette knife, of course, makes it a lot thicker, and I'll show you some examples. So this one here, as you can see, what happened was I put the blue on first, and if you look I'll move it a little bit close. What happened was I put this medium color blue, and then I went back on top of the medium color blue and put this blue, which is a little lighter, and then when it was still wet, I put this white. So I have these three colors: a dark blue, medium blue, and a mostly white with a tiny bit of blue, and I blended them into each other, but I did them on 3 separate steps. Again, putting the dark blue first, then when it's still wet, putting this medium blue, which is blue and white, and more white obviously, and then this color on top, which is, it looks white, but it has a tiny bit of blue in it. And that's wet on wet, and you can see how they I didn't press hard with the knife, so they didn't blend together where they're very smooth, like we did the wash with the palette knife. This is a little bit texturized, we didn't push as much, so you can see the colors here, they're still not blending together. They're blending somewhat, but they're not super blended, right, where they're just one color. And this is another one where I have this canvas first. It's painted blue underneath, and I did 2 things. I added a little bit of water because these are acrylics, but if you added oils, you could add turpentine to your oils, but I added water, and I have this lighter wash underneath. So you can see some areas look transparent with the blue. There are no white in these areas. Again, they're just water, and this is acrylics. Again, if it was oils, you might use a little bit of turpenoid. Now, what ends up happening is when this blue area was still wet, the next color that I put on top was this blue, this medium blue, where my finger is going back and forth, and that was mostly blue and some white. You can see it's still a lighter blue, obviously, but I blended it, and I kind of went in this round circular motion with my palette knife while it was still wet. And for this one, I used a very small knife, but if you don't have a small knife, you can kind of use the edge of your larger knife. And I just kind of went in these circular strokes while it was wet. Then the last thing I did was I cleaned off my knife, and then I put this white on top while it was wet. So both of these are wet on wet. This is more of a contrast, obviously, because you can see the darker blue in the background, and this is a less of a contrast because it has a lighter blue. Now, I want to show you something else. This is a painting that I did as a demo, and you can see this was also done in a different type of way with the palette knife. Again, it's done with a small palette knife, and what I did is, if you look at the Impressionist video, I had a white canvas, and then what I did is I just put spaces, I left spaces in between these strokes. So what does that mean? I put on the darkest color first, which was this dark blue here, and I just put them where I saw them. That's it. And then I let that dry, and then I came back with this medium color blue, and I put them very thickly on the canvas with my small knife where I saw them. And then I let that dry, and then I came back with this lighter blue, and I put them, and then I let that semi-dry, and then I came back with the white on top. Now, the reason why I let that semi-dry is because I wanted this light blue to blend a little bit with these white clouds, okay? Here, I kind of did the same thing. I mixed green, blue, and white, and I kind of dragged it down and I did a couple of layers on top of each other. But for the clouds, again, this is a little bit different, because what I did is I just went in, I did strokes in between. I didn't cover them all up at once. So I'll show you what that means on my palette here, so you have a better understanding of those strokes if you missed that video. So I'll show you very kind of fast. So I have my blue here, and pretend this is my palette again, and what I did is you see how I'm leaving these spaces in between? I'm not like really covering up, and then I would go, you know, where these spaces are in between, and I would put like a light blue, you know, or a medium color blue, and then I would leave some spaces, and then I would put a lighter blue and then a white on top. This gives me spaces in between where I'm filling in the color, and you kind of get that kind of technique, okay? So again, we talked about this and how this is different and how this is different. Now I want to move on to something else, just to show you really fast with the palette knife. So I have this blue kind of canvas. You can see I kind of put it on with a large palette knife, and now what I'm going to do is, because it's wet, I want to show you how you can do the strokes on the canvas when it's wet and when it's dry. So my canvas here is dry, but I'm going to leave this side dry, and then I'm going to re-wet this side so you can see the difference. So I have some white paint here, and I'm doing it directly on my canvas, and I'm just kind of moving it around with my palette knife in different circular, half circle kind of motions. I really don't want to move it out that much, but I want to show you something. If I scrape and with the side of my knife, I get these kind of textures that are going on. Some areas in the clouds might be a little bit more translucent. So again, you can achieve this by kind of scraping into the canvas. So when you hold it back, it looks like that. And it's kind of like this abstract kind of cloud, right? Okay, so that's one thing. The next thing you can do is you can push with the knife, and I'm pushing really hard with these kind of circular motions. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to push, and I'm just doing this big area over here so you can see the difference of what it looks like. And if you have too much white on there, you can take it off. And this is what I get, right? Do you see how that's like one big puffy cloud? Now obviously I did this really big. You know, if it was on your canvas, you could do something like this, where maybe it's this cloud that's kind of disappearing in the distance. You see I took some of this white paint, I'll do it for you again, and I just kind of moved it with my knife, and I didn't press hard, and I get these kind of textures, okay? If I press harder and I pick up more paint, obviously I can make the cloud much wider, right? And I can do that. I can start building up these cloud areas. Do you see how I do that? You know, okay? And I have these clouds, and they look smooth. They're not really rough. Now so I'll show you that again, okay? And again, you can use the edge of your bigger knife. The next thing I want to show you is if the canvas is wet. So let's put the canvas wet with the palette knife. And what does that mean? It means that I'm putting some blue on the canvas, and I'm going to use my half blade for this. You don't have to use a half blade. I'm just using it because it's near me. And what I'm going to do is I'm just covering this where it's wet. Okay, so let's make sure we cover it and it's all wet. And you see how smooth I can make that just by going back and forth, okay? So we have that blue area, it's shiny to you, and it's all beautiful, right? Now what I can do is I can take that same knife that I had, I can, you know, clean it off, but I want to show you how, when I put another color on top, what's going to happen, how it's drastically going to change, okay? And again, we're working wet on wet, so it's a little bit different. So I'm going to take some of these clouds here, my pretend clouds, on my palette knife, and what I'm going to do is I'm just putting that white spot there, and then what I'm doing is I'm blending it, but I'm not pushing that hard, and I'm kind of going in these half circular, like little motions. And what happens is I get that. Okay, so let's pull it back. And what you can do is you can keep building up that cloud if you want. So I'm going to take some more white from this side, so we have so much. And you can lightly put it on top. And if you don't press hard and you lightly put it on top, you get that. You see? The harder you press, you'll be mixing the paint. And if you don't want the paint to mix and you want to see some of that blue coming through for shadows, you could really build it up where it looks like that. Okay, and you say you see all those blues and then the whites coming. So I'll do it for you again one more time. And I have white on the back, and I'm just kind of pressing lightly. Okay, and I kind of get that. It could be like a wild night cloud. Okay, so I'm going to change it. So we have different clouds. We have these which were smooth, right? We have this which is one big puff, you know, and then we have these on top. And again, you can keep adding more white, and I'll put it closer to you. So you kind of get that kind of cloud there. And you can see the difference, right? Now I'm going to do another one down here that's going to be totally different. I need to get some more white on my back of my palette knife. And I'm going to blend it into this blue now. This is going to be a different kind of cloud. So I'm holding it and I'm pushing. I'm really pushing with my knife. And I'm kind of doing these circular motions too, just so you can kind of see the difference. And do you see how that blends? It's not really, I'm going to do it this way. You see the blue, and I'll show you. And what I'm doing is I'm kind of doing these spirals. I'm going like this so you can see where they are, but they blend together. You see it makes one big puff. You probably don't want that. But then some people, they might say, okay. And then what you can do is you can go back with a little bit of white on top of it. And I'll show you, I'm putting a little bit of white, and you kind of get that. You see? So and what you want to do is then you can blend it a little bit, and you get that. The best clouds that I recommend are the ones, I mean, it depends on what kind of style that you want. You might decide that, hey, I decide that I like my clouds to be a little bit more abstract, or I want them to be a little bit, you know, more blue, or I want them, you can mix any color. Now I'm going to show you something how we can drastically change that. And now I'm going to go on top just with more white. And the secret is kind of like to just move it around, right? Because these clouds are kind of like having a lot of texture. And then if you look, you kind of get that, okay? So, and I'll send the students, I'll send it to you in an email. You see how it drastically changes? This one, the strokes are kind of going across. These are all kind of blended together. This was one big guy, and these are kind of soft. You see how they're soft inside, and you see the background. Again, these are blended, and we discussed how we did those 3 colors, and this is on a dark sky and that. Now the last thing for the students that might have not seen the full demo on making these kind of clouds like I did in this painting, I'll do it for you real fast so you kind of get an idea of what it looks like. And all we have to do is mix the blue and the white. We need 3 different types of blue, right? We need a dark blue, which we kind of put down here. Okay, got our dark blue. By the way, I hope everyone's having a good day. And now we're going to put, and I'm going to use my smaller knife, and you see we can put in between these light blues, and you really want to let them dry. I'm just doing it fast now so you can kind of see. You see I have these different colored blues coming up in here, and you can hold your canvas or your whatever paper you're using for your canvas. You can hold it, and you don't have to have it flat always on a surface, always on the easel. When I'm doing these demos, so you can see them up close, I'm just putting them really close to the camera. A lot of the times I'm painting from my easel. And then what I'm doing is I have these white areas now next to each other. So I just did it so you can kind of see the blue. You see the blue and the white. and then the white and the blue. And if you keep doing them, you can let them dry and you can build up more colors. Do you see how that works? And it kind of is what I did here. Okay? So again, that's a little bit of a clouds, and we'll go into detail in class. But I hope you're having a good day, and I will see you soon. Ciao.